In the latest batch of Love is Blind, we're getting into politics again, but this time with a new couple, Devin and Virginia. And they're only now just talking about their political stances, which I think is a bit wild. I personally think that this should be a poll question, and I personally wouldn't be marrying somebody without knowing what their political stances were. But I think this is a case where they both might have assumed what each other's politics were simply because they either both knew or heavily suspected that each of them were black. Because they're black and Christian, I think they just both assumed that A, what their politics were, or B, that it wasn't that serious because they probably agreed on most things in politics. During their conversation, Virginia made a comment that most black people vote Democrat. Even those who are Christian and have conservative values, most black people vote Democrat. In America, of course. Although culturally, black people are quite conservative. Generally, they vote liberally in the West. Although I do think people's reasons for why they vote liberally differ. But at the same time, in the Christian community, it's also not a surprise if there are, some people that vote conservatively. Ultimately, because most black people vote the same politically, I think there is definitely less of the could I date someone who doesn't have the same politics as me or doesn't vote the same as me. But I would say when it does happen, I don't think that it is a deal breaker for a significant amount of black people. Simply because black people are always getting the short end of the deal regardless of what party is in power. But anyway, back to the conversation. So Devin and Virginia are sitting in bed and she's kind of joking around saying we need to, talk and get to know each other more before we get married. Is there anything about me that would make you run away? And then she brings up politics. And she's basically saying, you know what, we haven't really talked about politics. I don't really know your views on things politically. And Devin is being noticeably quiet, very quiet. So Virginia comes forward and says that, she is a Democrat, she is a Christian. So she does have some conservative views. But she is a Democrat and she believes in equality. She believes in, women's rights. She believes in, women's rights to have an abortion. And she's in support of the LGBTQ plus community. So I feel like perhaps her conservative views are more linked to religion. Maybe she just feels like, as a woman, a man should lead the household, is giving that. So then we get to Devin. David is trying to stay silent. He is not trying to say his views. And I already knew. I was like, I know what you are, Devin. I know what you are, Devin. And slowly but surely, he's kind of morphing into that, that mixed race guy. I don't know if he's a mixed race or a light-skinned guy that's on the plane with his t-shirt saying convicted felon, president, blah, blah, blah. And he's looking at everybody like... He was morphing into that in my head. But anyway, first he tries to play it off and he's kind of like, oh, I'm not, this way or that way type of thing. Basically trying to play the whole I'm political card. You know how Ben tried to do. And she kind of inquires, what do you think about abortion then? What do you think about abortion rights? And again, he's not trying to answer the question. He's trying to go around the question. He's not trying to answer the question. And then basically... Virginia kind of coaxes an answer out of him. I feel like she kind of says her answer and then he kind of piggybacks off of her answer but doesn't really say what he really feels. It's kind of like the PC version of what he really feels. But ultimately he said, obviously, women have the right to do what they want with their bodies, but he feels like the man should have a say. Virginia gets in there quick and says, oh, you think the man should have an opinion on what the woman does. She puts that in quick before he says, it should be his choice as well. Because that's what I feel like he wanted to say. I think he wanted to say it should be the man and the woman's choice and then they should decide mutually. It should be a unanimous vote on whether they should keep the baby or not. I think that's what he really wanted to say. That's clearly what he wanted to say. But like I said, Virginia kind of saved him a little bit. And then he goes, yeah, that's what I think. And that's what you think too, isn't it? And Virginia's basically like, in a roundabout way, morally, she thinks that, the woman should, have a discussion with her man and see what he thinks about it. But ultimately, the choice is hers and hers alone to make. That's what Virginia says. And I totally agree with that. Depending on what the situation is. Like, personally, I feel like if it's like a one night stand, like a sneaky link, like a man that you're not really taking serious, I feel like he don't need to know anything if you're planning to get rid of it. But if this is like a long-term partner, somebody you see a future with, spouse, I would assume this is something you would have a conversation about. But I don't think it should be a thing where like you're both now mutually deciding what you want to do. But my controversial opinion is, if you tell a man that you're pregnant and he says he don't want the baby, I feel like you should get rid of it. But I just want to preference that to say that even in the case where the woman keeps the baby that the man doesn't want, I don't think that's an excuse to be a deadbeat, because you knew the risks when you were laying with that woman. I don't think that's an excuse to be an absent father. But I'm curious to know what Devin feels on that stance, because I feel like a lot of Christian men are hypocrites out there, getting people pregnant and getting them to get rid of it. Anyway, then Devin starts to go on to talk about he votes for candidates rather than political parties. And that's when I was like, okay, I got you. You're definitely a Trumpie. Because that's the excuse the black people voting for Trump were using. Oh, it was the candidates, bitch. Just be for real. What I also found funny is that basically Virginia was talking about how most black people, vote Democrat. And Devin got so triggered talking about, well, my dad is black. I think maybe he was triggered by that Joe Biden comment when he was saying, like, if you're black and you don't vote Democrat, then you're not really black. I think he got triggered. But it's him saying my dad's black and not saying I'm black for me. That also confirmed to me that he was mixed race, because I wasn't sure if he was mixed race or just light skin. Because Virginia, she's light skin, but Devin is actually mixed race. Because I wasn't sure about his mother, because I'm always confused with the racial categories out here. I was like, is his mum white or is she Creole? The new identity that they be using. I just can't keep up, darling. But yeah, he was real triggered. And that definitely confirmed to me, like, his family vote conservative. You definitely vote conservative too. And it's just like, be proud. Like, why are you ashamed? Why are you ashamed to be a Trumpie? Is there something to be ashamed about? Being a Trumpie? They end the conversation with Devin asking whether Virginia can marry someone with political differences. And she says she can, but, so long as their political differences are not extreme. But I got to hear from you guys. Could you marry someone who has political differences? And I'm particularly interested to hear from black people. Could you marry another black person who has different political beliefs for you? Do you feel like it's that deep for us? Let me know what you think.